Hello again. Thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja. And tonight I'm going to be talking about the 2016 micro-budget indie horror film, 2016's The Barn. This, once again, this just came up as, like, from my searches. The algorithm is like, oh, okay, you're looking for Halloween movies, just horror movies. Well, here's one. Here's one for you. And at first, I thought, like, oh, okay, I know what this is, and I was exactly correct. like, okay, like there's no like twist, like, oh, okay, it turned out to be something far different. No, it actually turned out to live up to every single possible expectation that I had. A bit more impressive than I was initially expecting. I thought this was going to be one of those so bad it's good type thing. I was wrong. It is very well done. It is surprisingly well done for what it is. But now, hey, before I continue, what is The Barn? It's Halloween, 1989. Best friends Sam and Josh are trying to enjoy what's left of their final Devil's Night before graduating high school. But trouble arises when the two pals and a group of friends take a detour on their way to a rock concert. Just stick to it, guys. Just stick to it. They find an old abandoned barn and awakening evil inside. So what this is a town of Weary Falls, and there is a local legend. If you go by this one particular barn in this property that no one really visits, and you knock 3 times, say trick or treat, then unfortunately you will revive 3 demons. You have the Miner, aka Boogeyman. You have Hollow Jack, who is a pumpkin man or a pumpkin monster. And then you have the Candy Corn Scarecrow, who is a killer scarecrow. What happens in this film is that these 2 guys, Josh and Sam, pretty much like the summary said, they are given a task to complete because they upset a local bigwheel, Mrs. Barnhart, played by Linnea Quigley. If you don't know who Linnea Quigley is, she is one of the more talked about, in a good way, more talked about scream queens of the 1980s and even into the 90s. As I understand, from the last time I actually checked her work, I think 2020, she was still working on different projects and that. So, I mean, this was a film that was done on a micro budget. As I mentioned, it was crowdfunded. And this is a love letter to slasher films and sort of creature feature gore fests and that. And so to have someone they got Linnea Quigley, they got a genuine scream from a scream queen in the first 10 minutes of this. So, hey, they got some street cred as far as I'm concerned. They also have Ari Lehman. Who's Ari Lehman? Ari Lehman makes a few cameos in the film, and he plays a local disc jockey / local sort of rock and roll broadcaster, Wolfman Jack sort of thing. He plays Dr. Rock. Ari Lehman is the actor who played the child incarnation of Jason Voorhees. So, I mean, they got some pedigree actors in this. They're not in it for the entire production, but at least, hey, they got their attention. They made the phone calls on the proper channels and got these people really strongly associated with the genre to be in their movie. So they did a lot of stuff right. And as I mentioned before, it's very much a love letter to slasher films. And it also goes to show that low budget doesn't mean low quality. They did a very good job with balancing out the pacing of a very classic slasher film. But one thing that they do that a lot of slasher films actually do not, that I really genuinely appreciate, is they set up a very well thought out mythology, a very well thought out lore. Now, because when we think of slashers, we're either going to think of one of two films, or both. You think of John Carpenter's Halloween, or you think of Sean Cunningham's Friday the 13th. Those are serviceable slashers if you are someone that enjoys that genre. However, neither franchise really established reasoning for it. Now, if we're being honest with ourselves, there's 3 reasons that you make a slasher. TNA and Gore. That pretty much like covers it. So a lot of people are like, well, what do you mean story? We don't have to establish story. We're here for 3 reasons, that I just mentioned. And no, I don't like that. I don't like that because also it only makes things less coherent and aimless and just clunky and confusing. Like, if you don't have a foundation for the narrative, then the farther the franchise goes, the more confused it's going to be. Now, for some people, I'll admit, for some people, hey, that's not a problem. That's fine. I know what I'm here for, and as long as I get that, I'm going to enjoy it. But for someone such as myself, that is something that was also like a big turnoff as far as like just really bad storytelling. And some of them are just like, some of the slashers, not just for like Halloween or like Jason and like that, but like a lot of slashers to just come off as like goofy, and there's like no reason why the characters are here and why they're doing what they're doing, or the killer or the monster is doing what they're doing. It bugged me. And that's just the way I've always been. Like I do appreciate a well-written story along with all the other stuff, And if I don't have a really good written story, it does bug me. But anyways, this film actually does take the time and effort to establish a very interesting, well thought out lore. Who are these 3 demons? Why are they plaguing this town? And especially on Halloween. Some of you may be saying, well, it's Halloween. Well, what else are demons going to do but harass people? There's a reason. There's a very good reason for it. Now, with that, it becomes more of a slasher gore fest, I would say around the 40-minute mark. There's a little bit of a slump in the very middle of the film, but, it's put to good use. It's used to set up, the remainder of the second going into the third act. And so, that didn't bother me like too much. A lot of this is just like set up for what I think is a decent payoff. Now, there are a few things, especially being like a low-budget film, that are going to be noticeable and maybe a little bit like distracting. So, one of the things is, unfortunately, and I'm not entirely sure if this was deliberate or not, but the dialogue is both dialogue in script and dialogue and audio quality. The dialogue of the script is a little rough and ready. It's very, like, basic. People sometimes just say lines. There's not really too much conversation going on. And I don't quite know if that was intentional or not. The actors are doing a good job for, like, what it is. But I'm not sure if that was intentional because, as I just mentioned, a lot of established, like, slasher franchises, you're not really there for Shakespearean dialogue or anything. So I don't know if that was deliberate, just how basic the dialogue scripting comes off. And then there's the audio quality. The audio quality is mostly ADR, for those of you who are unaware, additional dialogue recording. So it's clear that, the camera is primarily done in close-ups of various shots. It's clear that they only had a few properties that they could work with, and so, they had to just film there at given times. And I have no doubt, very similar to if someone's, as you may have seen and heard on a bunch of YouTube videos, if someone has a truck that is zooming past them, or there's an ambulance, something like that, and that's where, sound editing comes in, and you can clean up a lot of that. The thing is, though, the ADR on this is actually kind of difficult to hear. I actually had to raise the volume on a number of occasions to try and get what they were going for. Also, like when I missed a line, despite how loud the volume was, okay, so I tried to go for like captions. Unfortunately, well, the captions that were available on YouTube, because this is a film that's available on YouTube, they're just auto-generated. Now, admittedly, I usually don't have a problem like with that, but the distributors provided to the channel Kings of Horror, so I'd imagine that someone could upload the script. Once again, not gonna judge them too harsh on that, because like none of my videos, unfortunately, like have subtitles. I'm I'm bad when it comes to like typing out accurate, depictions of the way that I talk. So I do try to use I don't try to use like four-letter language as much. I usually try to use just like regular speaking voice and regular vocabulary, so the auto-generated closed captions can get it as close to what I'm actually saying as possible. But for some reason, the ADR was like there were a few occasions where I couldn't understand what the characters were saying. So that was a little off, and I don't know, maybe that had something to do more with like the upload, and maybe there was some minor loss of quality. Not entirely sure, but all the same, those were just a few like little things. I would say one of the really fun and charming things about this was a lot of the practical gore effects. I actually didn't mind that this is a lot of cutaway shots and a lot of like squibs, just like I imagine like Eli Roth or somebody like with like ketchup bottles just like splurting them into like the corners of the scene and like that. Some of them are actually like impressively done with zip pans. If you don't know what a zip pan is, it's where there's a very fast motion to briefly distract the audience from an edit that is done. You've seen it countless times, but you just didn't know it. So there are a few zip pans, a lot of them that just like focus on a blood splatter for an object like off screen. There were a few sort of like After Effects shots for several of the demons, like if they're getting hit, where there's lightning effects. I didn't quite understand why that was. I think they just wanted some sort of like, well, because they're being very safe and they're not actually trying to harm anyone involved in the production. They needed something to showcase impact or injury on behalf of the monsters, but sometimes it was just kind of like odd as to like why they were putting it like here and there, especially since they were using practical gore effects. But I love really good micro budget like movies. Now, that being said, still have to give like an honest rating. This was much better than I was expecting. I thought it was going to be so bad it's good. It was just good. It was fun. It was low budget fun. So I'm actually going to give this a 6.5 out of 10. If you're looking for something more on the independent side, something that you haven't seen before, because indie films are not really well known. But I would recommend 2016's The Barn. Another plus, right before I finish this up. I know I've already gone a little bit longer than I was hoping to, but the soundtrack. The soundtrack is very solid. I was actually very surprised, especially like they have a good way of capturing that 1980s like feel, but not exclusively with synth. Especially like a lot of slashers also tapped into like Satanic Panic. Stuff like Black Roses or something like that, where, and a lot of it is rock music like as well. So with that, the soundtrack also like really solid. A little bit of synth, a lot of like era hard rock, which is nice. So, The Barn 2016, 6.5 out of 10. What did you guys think? Have you seen it? Are you, I hope that you add this to your Halloween viewing. We got a few more days like in there, so, take advantage of it. Look up something that you've never seen before. I just want to say to everyone that worked on the project, you did a really good job with The Barn. So, yeah, thank you very much for making an enjoyable film. And thank you very much for watching the review, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.